I found out my own brother was trying to take my farm the same week we buried our dad. I was standing in our tiny post office in rural Iowa, still in the black dress from the funeral, holding an official-looking envelope with probate court stamped on it. I thought it was just more paperwork about Dad's estate. I opened it right there by the P.O. boxes, and the first thing I saw was my brother's name, filed by Mark Carter. Petition to contest will. Petition to enforce secured loan and mortgage. I remember the words blurring. I had to grab the edge of the counter so I didn't fall. The postmaster, Mrs. Green, asked if I was okay, and I lied and said yes, while my ears were ringing. Because what was I supposed to say? No, I'm not okay. My brother just filed to take the only thing my dad left me, and he didn't even tell me? I walked out to my truck and sat there with that packet spread out over the steering wheel. It said my dad's will was invalid, that he wasn't of sound mind. It said I'd exerted undue influence and isolated him. It also said Dad supposedly owed Mark $250,000, secured by a mortgage on the farm, and that the farm should be sold to pay him back. My big brother, the golden boy, filing to sell our family land out from under me. I called him right there in the parking lot, hands shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Em, how you holding up?" "What is this?" I snapped. "What did you file?" He was quiet a second, then did this fake sigh. "Guess you got served. Look, it's just legal stuff. Dad and I had an agreement. I loaned him money to keep that place going. I'm just making sure I get paid back." "You're trying to force a sale of the farm," I said. "You're trying to take it from me." He actually gave this little laugh. "Don't be dramatic. You can always buy a smaller place. You're 34, not 80. It's not healthy clinging to that pile of boards like it's your identity." "Dad left the farm to me in his will," I said. "You know that. You were there when he told you." "He wasn't in his right mind," Mark snapped. "You and that small-town lawyer shoved papers in front of him when he couldn't remember what day it was. I'm just correcting that. The court will see that." "And accusing me of abusing him?" I said, flipping pages. "Neglect? Isolating him? Really, Mark?" "If the shoe fits," he said. "Look, you're not going to win this. You don't know how this game works. Just sign what my lawyer sends and I'll make sure you're taken care of. Otherwise, you're going to lose everything." I hung up without a word. My hands felt like ice, but my mind was suddenly very clear. He thought I didn't know how the game worked. Maybe I didn't, but I could learn. I'd spent my whole life underestimating myself. He just made the worst mistake of his life, underestimating me. To understand how deep that cut, you need to know a bit about us. I'm Emily, 34, born and raised on the same 160 acres, just outside a town most people only know from a highway sign. Corn, soybeans, a sagging red barn, a white farmhouse with peeling paint. That's my whole world. Dad, Tom Carter, worked this land his whole life. My mom died from breast cancer when I was 16. After that, it was just Dad, me, and my older brother Mark. Dad got quieter, stricter. The farm became everything. Church, job, identity. Mark was the golden boy, quarterback, honor roll, full-ride scholarship. He went to college in Chicago and never really came back except for holidays. Every Christmas, he'd stand in our kitchen in his expensive coat and say, "I'm not breaking my back in a field for pennies. I'm going to make real money." I was the opposite. I loved the land, the rhythm of planting and harvest, the way the air smelled after rain, the quiet of early mornings. I did a year at community college, then came back for good. I learned to drive the combine, handle the books, argue with seed reps, fix fences. I stayed. I don't say that to make myself sound noble. I chose this. But that choice cost me boyfriends, trips, weekends away. Every time the phone rang at midnight because a cow was calving or a storm knocked down a tree, It was me putting on boots. And when Dad started slipping, I was the one who noticed. He was 67 when he started forgetting things that weren't forgettable. Calling me Maggie, my mom's name. Getting lost coming back from town. Leaving the tractor running in the yard. Eventually we had a name. Early Alzheimer's. Even with that, he had clear days. On one of those, about 2 years before he died, he sat me down at the kitchen table. His hands shook a little, but his eyes were sharp. "Am, we need to talk about the will," he said. I remember the hum of the fridge, the smell of coffee, the way his voice trembled. "You're the one who's here," he said. "You're the one keeping this place running. It's not fair to pretend otherwise. I want you to have the farm outright. Mark can have the life insurance and whatever cash is left. He's doing fine in the city. You need this place. This place needs you." I cried. I argued. "He's still your son. You're going to make him mad." Dad nodded. "He'll be mad either way, but I want it in writing while I'm still clear. And I want there to be no question you didn't pressure me. That's why I'm going to see Harris alone." He meant Mr. Harris, the old lawyer in town. I drove Dad there, but he went in by himself. He insisted. "If Mark ever says you made me do this, I want to be able to say you weren't even in the room." He signed that will. I trusted that. I trusted my father. Fast forward to the post office parking lot and my brother's petition calling Dad incompetent, calling me manipulative, and claiming Dad owed him $250,000. By the end of that week, I had my own lawyer. Her name was Lisa Mendoza. Small-town attorney from the next county. Sharp brown eyes, sharper mind. Mid-40s. Calm. Not the type to be impressed by a fancy suit. We sat in her cramped office above the feed store, trucks rumbling outside, and I slid the packet across her desk. She read silently, then looked up. "So your brother is claiming 2 things. 1, your father didn't have capacity to sign the will that left you the farm. 2, your father owed him $250,000 secured by a mortgage on the farm, so the farm should be sold to pay him. He's also hinting that you financially abused your father. Is that accurate?" I nodded, throat tight. "I took care of him, Lisa. I did the bills. I would never do what he's saying." "I believe you," she said. "But the court believes proof. We need records, bank statements, tax returns, medical records, the lawyer's file from the will, and we need to see this loan." She steepled her fingers. "I'm not going to lie. This won't be easy. It's going to get ugly. Your brother is willing to accuse you of abuse in public to get what he wants. He won't stop because you're hurt. So you need to decide, are you prepared to fight this?" I thought of my dad at the kitchen table saying, "This place needs you." I thought of Mark's voice earlier, "You're going to lose everything." "I'm prepared," I said. My voice shook, but my decision didn't. "I'm not selling that farm. Not to him. Not to anyone." "Good," she said. "Then we get to work." First thing she did was demand copies of everything Mark had filed, including the loan documents. A week later, she called. "You need to see this in person." I sat in her office again, while she slid a promissory note and mortgage across the desk. 3 pages, dated 3 years earlier, supposedly signed by my dad and Mark. It said Dad owed Mark $250,000, secured by an open-end real estate mortgage on the farm. My stomach dropped when I saw Dad's signature. It looked like his name, but wrong. The letters were shaky in a way that didn't match how he wrote, even when he was sick. And the date? I knew that date. It was the day I'd driven him to Des Moines for a neurologist appointment. He'd been with me all day. "There's a notary stamp," Lisa said, pointing. "Name's Janet Cole. That part looks official. But see this?" She tapped the interest rate. "It's sky high. If this was real, your brother took advantage. If it's not real, It's not real, I said. I was with Dad that whole week. Mark wasn't even in town. We'll confirm that with the bank, she said, and with your father's medical and travel records. If this is fake or altered, your brother is in serious trouble. Presenting a fraudulent document to a court is a crime. A small, cold part of me felt almost satisfied at that thought. Then guilt flooded in. He was still my brother, but he was the one who chose this. As Lisa worked on the legal side, I went home and started digging through Dad's paperwork. Old shoeboxes, file cabinets, dusty drawers. I found the usual farm stuff, seed invoices, tax returns, unpaid vet bills. And in one box, under some yellowed envelopes, I found a manila folder labeled Mark. Inside were photocopies of checks Dad had written to my brother over the years. 10,000 here, 5,000 there. On one, from years before the diagnosis, Dad had written, "Loan to Mark for business, pay back by June," and later scribbled "paid" on it. The later transfers, after the diagnosis, had no notes, just money flowing out. At the bottom of the folder was a letter, folded in half, dated about a year before Dad's Alzheimer's was official. "Mark," it began, "I love you. You're my son. But this has to stop. I mortgaged the farm once to bail you out. I won't do it again. This land is your sister's future. If you can't respect that, you're gonna lose us." That line hit me like a punch. Dad had already told him no, long before the disease, long before the will. And yet, here we were. While I was processing that, Lisa got Dad's will file from Mr. Harris. It came with a surprise. A video. We watched it together in her office. There was Dad, sitting at Harris's desk, looking a little thinner than I remembered, but still very much himself. He read the will out loud, stumbling over a few legal phrases but getting through it. "I leave my farm at 1487 County Road 10 and all equipment, livestock and interests to my daughter, Emily Carter, in recognition of her years of work and care for me and this property," he said. "To my son, Mark Carter, I leave the proceeds of my life insurance policy and the contents of account number." He looked up at Harris and said with a little smile, "He's got more use for cash than cows." They both laughed. Harris asked him if anyone pressured him. Dad said no. If he understood that this was different from his old will-splitting things, 50-50. Dad said yes, and explained why. Watching that, some of the fear that had been chewing a hole in my stomach finally eased. It was clear. It was concrete. It wasn't just my word against Mark's, but that didn't stop Mark from pushing. We had a first little court appearance just to set dates. Mark showed up in a tailored suit with slicked back hair, and a city lawyer named Todd who looked like he slept in an office. I wore my only decent dress and a too big blazer. Lisa wore a navy suit and a calm, deadly expression. In the hallway, Mark sauntered over like we were at a family reunion. "Em," he said, smiling like none of this had happened. "We don't have to do this. We're family." "You already did this," I said. "You're the one who filed. You're the one who lied." He lowered his voice. "Look, the will's messy. Dad was sick. The loan is real. We can drag this out and let the lawyers eat everything. Or we can be smart. We sell the farm, split the proceeds. You get enough to buy a nice house in town, maybe start a little hobby business. You're not built for that place forever." There it was again, that little twist of contempt. Like my whole life's work was a childish phase. Before I could respond, Lisa stepped up. "Mr. Carter, you shouldn't be speaking to my client without counsel. We'll see you in mediation." Mediation sounded peaceful. It wasn't. A few weeks later, "You think that makes you look good?" The way he said it, to be reasonable, I hit record. He tried as usual. You know, Dad would never have cut me out if he'd been thinking straight. You took advantage. I did what he asked me to, I said. What about you? Did you take advantage when you had him sign that loan? I gave him money when he needed it, he said, irritated. Be grateful. Without me, that place would have gone under. Sam at the bank says they never made that loan, I said, keeping my voice mild. He remembers you bringing Dad in, but he turned you down. Mark snorted. Sam's an idiot. There's more than one way to skin a cat, Em. Ever heard of private lenders? Title companies? I got it done. It's recorded. Nobody's going to question it. Did you have Dad sign those papers after he was diagnosed? I asked. When he was confused? He knew enough, Mark snapped. Then he muttered, I had to fix the dates later because the notary messed up. But it doesn't matter. It's done. Right there, on tape. Fix the dates. My heart pounded. I kept my voice steady and let him keep talking, throwing out more little admissions, little bits of arrogance. When I played that recording for Lisa, she listened with her eyes half closed, then smiled for the first time in weeks. But I was scared of him for a while. When I heard he was trying to take your farm, I couldn't stay quiet. She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of old texts from Mark. In one, that land is wasted on her. Dad doesn't know what he's doing anymore. I'm going to make sure it ends up with someone who knows how to use it. Another, got a buddy with a notary stamp. If I play this right, I can lock the farm to me. Old man is confused half the time anyway. I felt my stomach twist reading that. Hearing my dad called old man like, I'm sorry I didn't come forward sooner. You're here now, I said. That matters. We brought everything. Loan documents, my dad's letter to Mark, the video of the will, the recorded phone call, Tara's texts, to the county attorney, Mr. Blake. A tall, worn-out-looking man who'd seen his share of small-town drama. He listened, asked questions, and finally said, This is serious. Faking or altering notarized documents, then filing them with the court? If we can prove that, that's felony-level fraud. He couldn't promise charges yet, but he opened an investigation. That alone changed the energy in the whole case. Mark wasn't just the accuser anymore. He was under a spotlight, too. While that was simmering, I was at home one evening cleaning out Dad's room. I'd avoided it for months. His boots were still by the bed, his hat on the hook. It hurt to touch anything. I pushed the bed away from the wall to vacuum and heard something scrape. A little metal box slid out from underneath. Old, dented, the kind people used to keep letters in. Dad was a hider. He'd put important things in coffee cans, under floorboards. My heart jumped a little. Inside the box were 2 items. A folded letter with my name on it, and a thick legal document with blue borders. I opened the letter first. It was dated 6 months before his diagnosis. Emily, it began. If you're reading this, I'm either gone or not myself anymore. You're probably mad I hid something. But I learned from my father that sometimes you tuck things away from under the trust, not just the will. There were conditions. One clause made me sit up straight. If any beneficiary shall directly or indirectly contest this trust, or any related testamentary disposition, or bring any action to challenge the distribution of trust property, such beneficiary shall forfeit any interest in said trust property, and such interest shall pass to the remaining beneficiary. In simple terms, if one child contested the will or trust, they lost their share of the farm entirely. There was also a handwritten note, initialed by Grandpa and Dad, saying if one child remains on and operates the farm for at least 10 continuous years, they can get the farm outright, and the other child would be compensated, if possible, from non-farm assets. I'd been working that farm full-time for more than 10 years. Lisa stayed late that night reading through the trust. Your dad and Grandpa were smart, she said. They saw this coming. Date? Janet hesitated. Yes, but my commission number changed that January. This stamp has my old number. Lisa raised an eyebrow. How would your old commission number appear on a document supposedly notarized after it expired? Janet swallowed hard. Sometimes, I did something stupid. I gave Mark some blank notarized pages for his business. He said he'd fill them in later. I know it's wrong. I shouldn't have. So it's possible, Lisa said, that you notarized signatures that were not actually signed in front of you? Janet's eyes filled with tears. Yes, I'm sorry. The courtroom was quiet. Even Mark shifted in his seat. The judge looked at Mark's lawyer. This raises serious questions about the authenticity of the loan documents. I'm issuing a temporary order that no enforcement of that alleged loan or mortgage can proceed, and I'm referring this matter to the county attorney. That was the first day I saw real fear on my brother's face. The fraud investigation picked up after that. The county attorney got Mark's financial records. Turned out he'd been in deep trouble for years. Maxed out credit cards, business debts, even an old bankruptcy. There was also a child support case for a kid he had with someone before his wife. He was behind on payments. Suddenly, his obsession with my farm made perfect sense. He needed a big chunk of money fast, and our land was his easiest target. And now, we had proof he'd tried to cheat to get it. Even so, the will contest had to be decided. That trial was one of the hardest weeks of my life. We sat in that wood-paneled courtroom for 5 days. My dad's life and decline in love laid out like evidence in a crime drama. Dr. Patel testified that at the time Dad signed the will, he knew what he owned, who his kids were, and what he was doing. Mr. Harris played the video of Dad reading the will. We watched my father on a TV screen talking about me keeping this place going. Neighbors testified about seeing me taking Dad to appointments, fixing fence, helping him bathe. Sam the banker told the story of Mark bringing a confused Dad in to try to get a loan on the farm, and how he'd refused. Then, I took the stand. Lisa walked me through my life, growing up on the farm, losing Mom, moving back, caregiving. I tried to keep my voice steady. Did you ever prevent your brother from seeing your father? She asked. No, I said. I asked him to visit more. I sent him updates. Sometimes he came. Most of the time he didn't. Did you ever use your father's money for your personal benefit without his consent? No, I said. And I told the story of putting back a pair of shoes I needed because Dad's meds cost more that month. Mark's lawyer tried to make me look jealous and bitter. He read a text where I'd vented to a friend about being tired of Mark swooping in for holidays like a hero. Sounds like resentment, he said. Sounds like exhaustion, I replied. But I still defended him to my dad, right up until the end. I didn't want this fight. Then Lisa introduced the trust. The judge took a break, read it, and decided it was valid. We got to read my grandfather's words into the record, about keeping the farm intact, about rewarding the child who stayed. The no contest clause, saying any beneficiary who contested the will or trust lost their share, was there in black and white. In her closing, Lisa laid it all out. My years on the farm, Dad's clear decision, Mark's pattern, asking for money, trying to get Dad to mortgage the farm. Then, when that failed, cooking up a fake loan with a friendly notary and hitting me with accusations of abuse. Emily Carter did not take advantage of her father, she said. She honored him, cared for him, and trusted his wishes. Mark Carter, faced with receiving an insurance policy instead of land, chose greed and deception. The law should not reward that. The judge took a week to decide. Those were some long days. When the ruling finally came, Lisa brought the papers to my kitchen. We sat where Dad had once talked about the will. The judge's order was careful, formal, but the meaning was clear. She upheld the will. She found Dad had capacity. She said there was no evidence I'd abused him. She called Mark's accusations unfounded and, in some instances, contradicting the credible testimony. She called the loan documents presumptively fraudulent, barred any enforcement, and noted the criminal investigation. And then she addressed the trust. Given the evidence, she wrote, the court finds that Mark Carter's challenge to his father's testamentary plan was intentional and in bad faith. Under the no contest provision of the Carter Family Revocable Trust, such a contest results in forfeiture of any interest in the trust property. Accordingly, the trust's interest in the farm shall pass entirely to Emily Carter. By trying to grab everything, he'd legally lost it all. I stared at those words until they blurred. The farm was mine. Actually, securely, mine. Not because I'd tricked anyone, but because I'd done what my father and grandfather asked, stayed, worked, and when the time came, fought. A week later, the county attorney filed charges against Mark for attempted fraud and making false statements to the court. When his mugshot hit the local paper, former hometown star charged in farm fraud scheme. I had this awful mix of satisfaction and deep sadness. This was my brother, but he'd done this to himself. People asked if I'd pressed charges. The state did that, I'd say, which was true. But I knew the truth. If I'd kept quiet about that loan, if I'd let it slide, none of this would have happened. The criminal case dragged on a few months. Eventually, Mark took a plea deal. He pled guilty to reduced charges. He got 2 years of probation, a pile of community service, and an order to pay restitution to the estate for the legal mess, including my attorney's fees. The day of his sentencing, the judge asked if the victim, that was me, wanted to speak. I stood up. My knees were jelly, but my voice was clear. I didn't want any of this, I said. I didn't want my dad to get sick. I didn't want to be in court with my brother. I loved my father. I used to love my brother. But when my dad died, instead of grieving with me, my brother accused me of abusing him and tried to take the farm my dad left me. I'm not asking for prison. That won't fix what's broken in my family. But I am asking for consequences. Because what he did wasn't a family argument. It was fraud. And if he doesn't learn from this, he'll hurt more people. I looked at Mark then. He stared at the table. After court, outside on the steps, he finally came over. You got what you wanted, he said bitterly. The farm, my money, my reputation trashed. You happy now? What I wanted, I said, was to grieve our dad without going to war. You filed that petition, Mark. You forged those papers. You lied about me. You did this. You could have told him to back off, he said. You could have protected me. I protected Dad, I said. And myself. I used the law. I didn't make you break it. He shook his head. Enjoy that stupid farm. Hope it keeps you warm when you're alone out there. He turned to storm off, and I almost let him go. Then I heard my dad's words in my head. Even if he hates you forever. Wait, I said. He paused. I went home and grabbed that metal box. Inside, next to my letter, there was another envelope with his name on it. I'd found it after. I hadn't been sure whether to give it to him. I walked back out to the driveway as he sat in his car, engine running. Dad left you this, I said, holding out the envelope. From before he got sick. He took it like it was a hot coal. What's it say? I don't know, I said. It's not mine to read. For a second, the charm fell off, and I saw him. The same kid who used to help me climb the hay bales, who'd cried at Mom's funeral. Then it was gone. He nodded, put the envelope on the passenger seat, and drove away. We don't talk much now. We nod at Christmas. We keep it polite. I don't know if he read that letter. I don't know if it changed anything. What I do know is this. When he filed to take my farm, he thought it was going to be easy. He thought I was just a soft-hearted farm girl who'd cave when he threw around big legal words. He thought lying about me and forging some papers was just how the game is played. He didn't see that over all those years of fixing tractors and balancing feed bills and sitting up with my dad through bad nights, I'd learned patience. I'd learned how to pay attention. I'd learned how to stand my ground. I didn't get revenge by screaming or doing anything reckless. I got it by quietly collecting every receipt, every note, every text, every memory that mattered. By trusting decent people, Lisa, Sam, Dr. Patel, even the county attorney, to do their jobs. By forcing his lies into the light where they couldn't survive. The legal win was revenge, sure. The no contest clause kicking in, the loan tossed out, the restitution order. Those were all blows he never saw coming. But the deeper revenge, the one that still matters when I'm out walking the fields at sunrise, is this. He didn't get to rewrite our story. He wanted a version where he was the smart savior. I was the manipulative caretaker. And Dad was a confused old man he could use. Instead, the record now shows what really happened. A father who made a clear choice. A daughter who honored it. A son whose greed and lies backfired so hard he lost the very thing he wanted most. The farm is still here. The barns still creak in the wind. The fields still shine green in June and gold in October. Some evenings I stand at the fence line and read Dad's letter again, the part where he told me to use every legal means to protect this place. I did. It cost me my relationship with my brother. It cost me sleep, money, peace. I won't pretend it was easy or clean, but when my brother filed to take my farm, I turned the tables on him the only way that lasts, with truth, with patience, and with the law. He walked into court certain he could take everything from me. He walked out with a record, a restitution bill, and nothing but his own choices to blame. That's the thing about revenge when it's done right. You don't have to destroy someone. You just have to stop letting them destroy you and let their own actions do the rest.